Farlost. Created by John Miro.
60. Lou got lost in the hologram that followed her through the corridor from engineering. It showed something never before seen, in Farlost or anywhere else. A winged ship, the Betty, belly open and strapped to a stack of silver tanks, HHL-6, and, wrapped all around, like multicolored wax burned down the side of a bunch of mismatched candles, the ancient ship Six's arrival had set free from the thorn. She had gotten pretty good at using the holos Daisy could project for her and limping around at the same time over the last day, and all things considered, she felt like a new woman. After a quick jaunt back to weightless HHL-6 for a safety inspection and to grab fresh digs from her quarters, followed by a real water shower in one of the massive change rooms of the Betty's cargo bay airlock, she'd slept for 4 whole hours. She moved her shoulders, felt the muscles' tension give a little, felt the ache fade a little more. Between HHL-6 getting a clear and amazing bill of health from her first officer's team, the sleep, shower, and fresh clothes, she felt alive again. Pretty good for a soldier who never thought she'd walk again. She rubbed the small of her back through her clean ship suit and felt the square outline of the large gauze pad running from the crack of her ass up to her rib cage. The gel underneath varied from room temperature to unbearably warm, but it was a small price to pay for the use of her legs again. She almost laughed out loud. She didn't even know what a Vostine was yet, but she was going to do something unspeakably naughty and appreciative to the first one she met. She heard the laughter before she was halfway to the ramp to the observation lounge. Laughter and singing. She stopped for a moment, her new commander brain itching. She couldn't stop thinking about the future. Now she knew there was going to be some sort of future for her crew. Hascom Heliocentric Lab 6 was lost so far from home, the computers of every alien vessel ever trapped here still hadn't found any known starlight to map their way home. But she and Dwyer had kept 116 souls alive. She told her eyes to stow the moisture as she thought about her friend and late commander. Ed Dwyer would be proud of her, she knew. He'd say the universe had swallowed 9 souls, 11 if you counted Rosa Coro and Stan Rennick, and she'd saved the rest. Footsteps hammered the deck grating behind her, and she rubbed her eyes once before 2 Hascom-suited junior crewmen bounded by. She snorted as the civilian spacers offered her mangled but respectful salutes. She appreciated the attempt anyway. Then they were past her. She wasn't up to running yet, nothing strenuous while her body was rebuilding itself. There had been some risk of spontaneous combustion, according to Gruber. Lou wasn't sure if the man was messing with her about that, but either way, his words kept her moving slow. Her brain made up for it, constantly churning as it ingested the constant feed of information about Farlost, the Guard, the planets and asteroid belts, and the alien races and data as currency, and she shrugged her shoulders again and waved away the hologram. Enough. Her crew was alive, and HHL-6 was in one piece. Thanks, Beecham had told her, in no small part to his brilliance, as well as to the millennia-old alien living ship that had wrapped around them and reinforced the towering stack of fuel tanks of 6 that was all they had left of home and Earth. Enough, she said aloud, tugging on the front of the jumpsuit. There was music playing and a party ahead. She climbed the ramp. The observation bubble had been destroyed by one of the boomers. The ramp had sealed itself before explosive decompression had kindly tossed all evidence of the violence into the void. What Lou Montaigne climbed into now was something else. Something magical. The walls of the observation dome were much farther away than before. The ship that held them all rose 70 meters all around them, multicolored mountains leading up to pins of starlight shining through whatever the ancient intelligence guiding the wreck used to keep out the hungry vacuum of space. The air wasn't the same either. It smelled a little salty, a little funky, and it reminded her of a beach on the Atlantic she'd walked once at low tide, with the scent of plants and sea animals all around her. She moved to the side to allow more of her crew, lips pressed together, eyes wide, to pass inside. She offered them gentle pats and confident words, and was rewarded with small smiles and deeper breaths from people who trusted her with their lives. She felt herself growing to fill the role they needed her to fill. She stared around the multicolored metal hills of the Eternal, growing lighter and more festive because they needed her to show them it was safe, it was essential, to live and to celebrate. The ship hadn't said anything meaningful yet to Daisy or Beecham or anyone, but Lou saw people walk to the walls, touching it and smiling. She'd done the same, out of gratitude and suspicion in equal measures, before she'd let any of her crew in, and she had felt the same peace and comfort that she saw growing now on the new faces. Lou wondered if they heard, as she had, that one word echoing through their minds. Safe. "Everybody, can I have your attention, please?" Lou shook her head as Travis's voice appeared out of thin air next to her. She'd finally stopped looking around and accepted the magic tricks Daisy could do with sound, and looked a few dozen meters ahead, where a small circle of crates and chairs had been made. There was Travis, smiling and clapping his first officer, Doug the Bug, on the shoulder, or one of his shoulders, as he flipped something on a grill. She joined him by the alien barbecue as he continued with a wave. "Hi, I'm Sam Travis, captain of the Betty." He paused, an aw-shucks grin on his face. "Or whatever she is now," he went on. A chorus of "Hi, Sam," returned from the crowd. "I know you've had a tough couple of days. I want to welcome you all to Farlost." There were a few weak laughs, and Lou could see the man struggle to keep his face light, too. "There's no denying it. Your lives have changed. This is your home now." Quiet settled over the dozens and dozens assembled. Travis held up his hands. "But the crew of the Betty and I are living proof there's a good life to be had out here. You're all welcome to explore the Betty, and there's plenty of food coming, and drink, of course." There were stronger cheers at that. "Also, anyone who wishes is welcome to sleep here under the gravity and stars." Then he pointed across the circle to where Beecham leaned on another crate, his head in a cloud of holograms. "Dr. Beecham tells me we're ready to disappear." Beecham blushed deeply at the applause and the roar of the grateful crowd. He said something Daisy didn't amplify, and a minute later, 3-meter-tall white numbers appeared in the sky. Lou joined in the count down from 10 and made her way to stand by Beecham's side. She nodded at Arnel Villanueva and Taggart walking in from the far side of the circle. The countdown continued, and every voice joined in. Lou felt a swelling in her chest. It was like a New Year's vidcast, and she half expected the crowd to spontaneously break out into Old Lang Syne. She understood the joy, and she shared it. Beecham promised that the predator who had their scent, the mysterious Zeus that had loosed the boomers upon them, wouldn't be able to track them once he raised the light show to block the full spectrum. He'd wanted to raise it hours ago, after the first surprised readings from the Betty and Six's power systems, informing them that not only had the Eternal kept their hulls together during the violence of riding out the nuclear detonation of HHL-6's drive section, it had also connected to all its systems. Life support and power now thrummed at higher efficiency than the computers could even calculate, Daisy included. After several million computer simulations, Daisy, Sam, and Lou had finally signed off, and Gruber had hijacked Daisy's communication channel to invite everybody to observation for a barn party before the countdown. The crusty engineer had made a brilliant suggestion. A celebration was just what everybody needed to let off steam and recalibrate after the past few days. The countdown approached 0, and everyone stared up to watch the stars wink out. Lou let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That's it. We're safe. For now. This time, the roar was deafening. Daisy's whisper cut through the applause and catcalls. "We are now completely hidden. We have altered course now for a 3rd time, and the Zeus is making no moves to follow." "Now this is stealth tech," Beecham preened. Taggart appeared behind Beecham and clapped a hand on his back. They grinned at each other. "How's the memory coming, Ron?" Lou asked. A sheepish expression molded the security officer's features. "Still can't see it clearly, any of what happened when I was being driven around by that thing. It's all a haze, like a dream. Beecham nodded. Brain chemistry changes play hell with recall. Imagine being possessed by an alien as resulting in an altered state, and he looked around, and whatever he saw made him cut off his droning lecture. His voice lifted with self-effacing humor. Speaking of altered states, I stayed drunk one entire semester of college, so I could remember what I'd learned for the final exam. Never would have passed if I sobered up. Lou laughed. You've changed, Doc, she said. Beecham didn't even bristle at her calling him Doc. Well, I'm glad the light got the hell out of you, Taggart. Exorcism isn't in my wheelhouse. Taggart's shoulders moved with silent laughter. Lou was happy to see he could laugh after being the mouthpiece for something everyone in Farlost seemed scared of. The lights seemed to have gotten what they wanted, the Eternals safely away from the guard, as no one had seen any loved ones since the Eternal hugged them and Beecham nuked them away at high speeds. Captain Travis, she called to the man as he wandered over to them. Told you, he growled. Sam. He looked around at the others. That goes for all of you. Sam looked better than he had any right to as well. He had a slight limp to match Lou's, but the cracked artificial hand was repaired, and the damage to his middle was hidden by a fresh, if threadbare, collared red shirt and vest, and what looked a lot like blue jeans. What did Gruber mean? Villanueva asked, carefully rubbing a spot of oil off of his black jumpsuit. Lou wondered if Villanueva had eaten, showered, or even changed since their arrival in Farlost. When he called Taggart a sensitive, Villanueva went on. Gruber's voice turned heads as he joined the circle. The lights used him, like a puppet, to save Beecham so Beecham could save them. He sauntered over to Travis's side, a banjo carried under one arm. Lights project themselves into memories to trick people we call sensitives, he said, as he lifted Travis's right hand and inspected it. Not too many of any species can, well, pinch hit for them physically. That makes you a big-time sensitive. He let go of the captain's hand, shared a nod with Taggart, and eyed Lou silently. Gruber had run into her on the 6 when he joined Villanueva on part of the inspection. Keep an eye on Taggart, he'd told her then, before dragging Villanueva away to explore more of what he undoubtedly saw as an antique spacecraft. Beecham seemed to pick up on Gruber's meaning. Good thing he is, too. It's how he convinced you to wait for this thing to catch up, right? Taggart could do no wrong after saving his ass, it seemed. Ron's not a problem. What are you doing about Stan and Rose? Gruber scowled at Beecham, then his eyes darted to the side. Lou heard a whisper of Daisy's voice as a hologram opened and displayed murky, backward images to the engineer. Lou was grateful for the distraction and flashed a warning at Beecham to rein in his emotions. Travis stepped closer. We'll do what we can for them as soon as we can. First, we have to make sure we're well and truly hidden, and take stock of what we have and what we need and line up some barter. You're talking about physical goods and data trades, yes? Beecham asked. You and Montaigne settled the disposition of the material goods on the Eternal between you, but we want to be very careful how much we show and tell about the light show, he warned. Maybe I can't patent those fields out here, but they're still my creation, and I want to get as much as I can for every nugget of knowledge that went into them. Lou sighed, disappointed. Once a prick, she thought. Beecham met Lou's annoyed stare. Tech is the most potent form of money and power in Farlost. That tech is all the barter Six can lay claim to buy on its own. I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for you and this crew, and whatever I can get for trade in that technology belongs to all of us. Wide eyes stared back at Beecham. I hate to interrupt this touching moment, Gruber huffed, but there's something you need to see. He beckoned everyone to gather away from the circle and gestured in the air. Daisy received this message a couple of course corrections ago. Don't worry, we lost them, but, well, listen. A hologram appeared, accompanied by the hiss of air and footsteps and hushed computer tones on the other end. Lou stepped forward, peering intently at the bridge of the Zeus. It had been changed a little, but the railings, the raised console behind the command chair in the center, well, they were all the same. And in that chair sat an older man. His dark eyes flashed with intelligence. Healthy, pink skin shone on his bald head and glowing cheeks. He was broad-shouldered and commanding, in a white dress uniform similar to the U.S. Navy and Space Command uniform, but with new touches. like the hollow floating in place of the traditional ribbons over his heart, across which words floated in alien script, ever scrolling and changing. The older man smiled into the camera, his full black beard obscuring his lips. "This is Admiral Robeson on the Guard flagship Zeus, calling the crews of HHL-6 and Betty McKenna." "How?" Beecham snapped his fingers. "The flight data recorders. The emergency beacons automatically broadcast our ID and location." Lou nodded and held a hand to silence him. The man's face remained respectful, pleased even by their accomplishments, but something flashed in his eyes. "Today you bested the most powerful force in all of Farlost. Today you bested me." He leaned forward, and Lou resisted the urge to lean just as far back. "To the new arrivals, the crew of the Betty McKenna will no doubt tell you my guard is dangerous, a force to be reckoned with, to be feared. Pay them heed. To Captain Travis and First Officer Douglas, the Eternal survived for 1,000 years inside the shatter zone of a thorn. My scientists also believe HHL-6 arrived inside a working force field. Taking them from me is unacceptable. Return them to me now, or be destroyed." The Admiral laughed. Lou's blood curdled. "There has been too little challenge to my guard for too long. I almost hope you will keep running. In any case, this is your only warning. Return to Zeus now, or I will have you hunted down, your ships destroyed with your crews inside, and I will take those precious resources from you. Robeson out." The hollow disappeared. The silence stretched. "Fuck me," Beecham wailed. "I bring alcohol," loomed a deep, inhuman voice, and Lou and everyone in their little circle jumped. She turned to face the multi-legged lobster alien, Travis's first officer, Doug. He held 6 cups. "Irish whiskey, fresh from Gruber's stills." He passed them out to all assembled. "Well," Gruber said, "the next best thing to Irish." Lou laughed and they all clinked cups together. "It is a wondrous thing," the alien boomed, pointing to the ridges of equally alien metal surrounding the observation deck. "Our reaction tanks are full, our life support replenished." The gigantic, intimidating alien leaned down and whispered, "Sam has been fascinated by the Eternal since we arrived, you know. It is his white shark." "Whale," Gruber corrected Douglas with a swift kick to the carapace. "White whale." Aliens mangling pop culture quotes. Lou didn't know what to say, so she took a slug of her own whiskey. She looked into the glass, mournfully noting it was half empty already. She'd want more. Much more. Gruber stuffed his glass in one of his many shipsuit pockets and put both hands on his banjo. A few more notes floated to Lou's ears in answer to Gruber. Murray Barrowman showing up with his fiddle. The engineer grinned and walked with Barrowman back to the circle where Patel was drinking with Carl Nishioka and Steve Bostetter, and the two men settled wordlessly on the same song and began to play. Lou wandered past them, stopping where Newark and Dina and Doc Sanders were, well, she couldn't think of a better word than cuddling one crate over. "Forrest," she said, tipping her head to the doctor, who had his arm over Dina's shoulder. Newark lay on the ground in front of them with its tentacles wrapped around their legs and behind their backs for the human man and woman to lean on, and happily vibrating, almost like a cat's purr. Forrest shrugged. "Once you save a life, you're responsible for it?" Dina patted one of Newark's tentacles. "He's a touchy-feely pain in the ass," she said, her words contrarily warm in tone. Sanders kissed Dina's ear. "Our little bundle of joy. And tentacles." Lou couldn't help but laugh. She'd been doing so much of it, she suspected it was her own PTSD leaking out. "No smooching on duty? My first officer is right over there. You want to get written up?" "I don't think I work for Hascom anymore," Villanueva shouted back. "Commander," the older man called softly. He scratched at the short curly hair on one gray temple and rubbed the back of his neck. Lou walked closer, knelt down. I'm the only doctor on 6 now, and we need to talk about what comes next." He gave a weak grin, eyes tracking around the massive enclosure. "Our friends on the Betty had the right idea, starting with a party. There's going to be a lot of post-stress trauma. Hopefully nothing as severe as Burkov, but whatever you need, Doctor." Lou nodded, put a hand on his knee. "The crew comes first." "Crew first? What an uncorporate thing to say," the older man smiled. "Dwyer was right about you." Lou bit her lip and returned the smile gratefully. A tentacle curled around Lou's pinky finger and squeezed lightly. Lou started but didn't pull away. She followed the tentacle to the large, pink, black and gray exoskeleton on the floor beside her. A muzzle emerged from the cottony webbing hiding the body in the center. A tongue stuck out, panting happily. She squeezed the tentacle back. "Speak of the devil." Lou looked up. Doc Sanders' kind face had gone as hard as his last words, and he glared over Lou's shoulder. A cadaver-thin man in a wrinkled, stained suit shuffled past, casting a perfectly timed scowl toward all assembled. Chairman Goss. He looked down his bent hawk's nose at the commander and the assembled crew. "Surely you don't believe that, Commander? That the crew comes first? Hascom Corporation put you on this ship and compensated you handsomely. As chairman, I'll be making all decisions going forward." "There's no law here and no economy, Chairman. Only people." Lou rose and turned. She held her hands out, taking in the singing and music all around them. "Hascom Corporation doesn't exist here, and the same maritime law that gave me command keeps me in command. I'll decide how things run from here on out, and I'll listen to what the crew thinks and needs. You're just one voice here." "We'll see about that now, won't we?" Goss walked closer, sneering. "I'll let you know a secret, Commander. People need to be told what to think." "Did Burkov need to be told what to think?" Lou asked him heatedly. "I heard you had a video call with Burkov before he blew himself up. If I find out you had anything to do with that—" "Burkov was mad." Goss's smile deepened. "And it seems HHL 6 is commanded by a fool." He straightened his ridiculous tie. Lou heard the Velcro hidden beneath rip as he walked off. "Not to worry. You don't have me trapped in that cellar anymore. I'll make sure things turn out better from here on out." Lou stared after the old man as he turned and strode imperiously away. Too many of the crew bowed or made deferential movements as he passed them by. "Isn't he a ray of sunshine?" Travis asked at her side. "He's an old fool. What's he going to do? He's got no money and no real influence here." "I've known people like him," Travis murmured. "Don't be so sure he's harmless." Lou smiled, shark-like. "I guess I'll have to keep an eye open, won't I?" Just then, one of Taggart's security officers, John Pruitt, passed by. He still looked impossibly young and stern-faced in his spotless black ship suit, but he looked a bit more relaxed now, a bit more confident. He returned the commander's smile and followed silently in Goss's wake. "Well, we made it," Sam sighed, and he nodded with his chin and walked through the circle. "Got away clean, in fact, and for once," he pointed at the rising multicolored wall, "we got away with her pockets full." "Daisy scans?" Lou asked, an eyebrow raised. "The rumors are true," Travis nodded. "Dar's gold in them thar hills." He dropped the bat accent. "And aluminum, titanium, hundreds of other precious metals, not to mention veins of pure liquids, gases, and protein baths." Lou saw Wish floating overhead of Salix at the base of the wall where Travis was heading. "So it really is a care package," she whispered. "Seems to be," Travis said. "Daisy says the thing's been stuffed with raw material, but there's no crew, no remains of a crew, no internal living space at all. The tech is advanced, and even though there's been some serious degradation to the ship's nerve systems, it probably still has a lot of information we can mine without hurting the thing." "Gold in them thar hills," Lou repeated. "Captain Sam," Wish bleated, swooping low over their heads as they approached the first bubbling cluster of rainbow-colored alloy melted onto what only hours ago was the outer hull of Betty. "Tell him to unplug and chill out for a while." Salix knelt still and silent on the floor. His hands hung limply at his sides, and a cluster of roots and nodules fell from his left to disappear inside a small hatch on the Betty's skin. "I needed to see the Eternal for myself, Captain," Daisy answered, but her voice didn't appear from the air around them. It came from the voice box around Salix's neck. Lou pointed at the box. She had a question ready to go when the answer hit her, and her finger trailed along the roots disappearing inside the open hatch. "Daisy and Salix are related," Sam nodded. Trees start out as little floating weeds, then mimic more complicated life forms and pattern themselves after, well, us in Salix's case, to learn more about the world and take that experience back to their mother trees. Wish farted loudly for attention. "Let the Scarecrow go, Daisy. He's been hooked up long enough to fix him up. There's too many humans around here. I need my wingman back." "Come on, Wish," Travis called upwards, annoyed. "Standing right here." "Fix," Lou started, but Travis filled in the holes on his own. Trees are like a hive, and the oldest, biggest trees like a queen bee. Daisy processes out toxins that would otherwise build up and kill the scarecrows, worker forms that care for her, like Salix. And while they're connected, all his memories are passed on to Daisy to become part of the hereditary record. "Mother nothing," Wish taunted. "Daisy's actually closer to, well, a god, if you ask Salix. Me, I think he's got stock market syndrome." "Stockholm syndrome," Travis corrected, and threw a glare to shut Wish up. He leaned closer to Lou. "Wish is a bit of an atheist, but yeah, Salix can't live on his own without Daisy, but Daisy can't do much without Salix or her ties to the Betty either. Usually trees have thousands of scarecrows serving them, but Daisy... Actually, I'll leave the story of how we came to have a tree for a ship's computer for another day. If I wanted to be elsewhere, Captain, I would be," Daisy said on the air. "And we're lucky to have you, Daisy," Travis called out warmly. Wish farted again. Lou resisted the urge to rub her forehead. So damn much to learn. "So what do you think, Daisy?" Wish asked, swooping closer to Salix's still form. "Is that rainbow scow alive?" "Yes, the craft is alive," Daisy replied. "It possesses capacity for growth, functional activity, and continual change preceding its death. I suspect it has been hibernating the entire time it was trapped by the thorn. As yet it is only responding to my stimuli reflexively, therefore it may not have fully woken from hibernation. Or it may simply be senile after so much time alone." "I'd love some time alone," Wish muttered, eyes swooping over the crowded observation deck behind them. "I get the feeling Wish doesn't like us very much," Lou murmured. "Mostly it's you," Travis whispered out of the corner of his mouth. "He was attached to that big window on the bridge. He used to fly up and perch there for hours." "Would you rather be dead and have a window?" Lou asked. "You're just lucky we had blast doors that closed the breach when you blew it out, or we'd both be dead, and the Six and Betty would either be debris or wearing a guard tail number." "Educated guess after I saw the blast doors come down to block that last boomer," Lou said, grinning. "We were almost out of ammo. That tumbler was rolling right for us, and nothing to keep from getting sucked out, so—" Travis leaned closer. "And that's another thing. You're lucky we both fit inside my chair's restraint harness." "It was a little snug," she said, the grin widening. Travis shrugged. "Get us a new window and Wish will forgive you." "I already do." Lou turned to say something mocking to Wish. She had the feeling the Manta would respect little as much as some good trash talk, but mercifully was distracted by Salix rustling back to life, reaching down and gently untangling the nodules around his wrist. They slowly retracted into the open hatch as he stood and clacked his forearms together in greeting. Salix reached up, too fast for Lou to see, and grasped one of Wish's fins. "I was right," came his machine voice from the box around his neck. "The ship's alive. You're buying the first round." Wish sank lower and laid both mouth graspers on Salix's shoulders, surprisingly gently, it seemed to Lou. "I told you, you just get yourself back in one piece. Your best friend would buy all the rounds." Salix patted the graspers and nodded. Even Lou could clearly see that the walking plant was touched by the Manta's affection. Then he reached past the graspers and slapped the side of the mouth. "Well, if the chicken's buying, I'd better get right to drinking." He spun Wish up into the air and headed for the grill. Wish flew after him, bleating, "Sal, I'm not a chicken!" Lou emptied her glass and let the burn distract her from the 1,000,001 questions whirling in her brain. Her crew was stuck far from home, likely lost in this place forever. Their fates were now tied to these virtual strangers aboard the Betty, and to the whims of life in a lawless system full of aliens and strange governments. Humans were the bad guys here, it seemed, and the most feared warlord in Farlost wanted to capture them and strip away their secrets. But all that would wait until tomorrow. It could all wait. The burn in her gut did its job, and the tumult of her thoughts died down, letting her move on to more pressing business. "So, Captain Sam." She stuffed the glass in a suit pocket and turned to Travis, nudging his shoulder with her own. "Where to now?" "We should talk about that," Travis said, turning and meeting her gaze earnestly. "We're in this together, Commander. Betty and Six aren't going anywhere separately for a while. That makes us partners as far as I'm concerned, 50-50 on profits and decisions. I have some ideas, and I want to talk them through with you. I know where a fleet of independent spacers meet for trade in the winter belt. No matter how much resources are on board the Eternal," Travis looked up again with a hopeful gleam in his eye. Then he shook his head and looked back at her. "The ship will still need repairs, intel, and, frankly, some allies to keep us out of the guards' crosshairs." He chuckled. "The thing is, Commander, Betty was out of gas when we met, literally and figuratively. You think we saved you? Well, you and your people saved our lives, too." "Partners?" Lou asked, feeling her stomach shift in a funny way after Sam laid all his cards honestly on the table. She stepped closer. "Thank you." Lou reached out and laid her hand on his hip, fingers splaying under his vest. "But I meant where to right now." She sidled closer and adopted a thoughtful expression. "My bunk on 6 is still 0G, which suggests some interesting possibilities. But sometimes it's good to be traditional." Travis nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm all about tradition," he murmured, and pulled her gently toward the ramp. Lou let him steer the way, as she let her eyes roam over her celebrating crew, her new allies, and the living ship above. Together, they'd survived more than she ever thought they could, despite the poker face and stubbornness she'd stuck to through it all. They had survived. And if this was the game fate had dealt her a hand in, Lou was damned well going to play. First, she'd learn the rules. Then she'd break the rules. And then she'd teach Goss, Robeson, the Thorns, and anyone else who threatened her crew a whole new way to play the game. She stepped in close to Sam's side, wrapped an arm around his waist, and knit her fingers tightly between his as they started down the ramp. Tomorrow, after a more proper welcome to Farlost.
Farlost. Music by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Learn more at servingworlds.com.
Hi, John Miro here. Farlost is brought to you by my backers at Patreon. Patronage starts at $1 a month, or about 25 cents a cliffhanger. Patreon.com. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support.